Welcome to the MDM Show. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? So, we have a great show tonight. And our mission here, of course, is to help you turn whatever you desire into real-life manifestations by sharing our revolutionary technology to make that happen for you. We bring you such cutting-edge information through our resident wizard, Peter Schenk, and also through such magical guests each week that are really making a difference to improve our lives on a variety of levels. I am your co-host, Donna Whittington, along with the founder of this program, the modern-day mystic himself, Peter Schenk. Peter, how are you?
How are you? I'm doing great. Doing great. Awesome guest tonight. But before we kick off the show, I'd like to do a live Aquaware 5 demo. So everyone to get a glass of water, please. So again, Aquaware 5 has been out about a week and a half now, and the feedback is starting to come in, and it's pretty off the hook. A lot of good stuff out there. So Aquaware 5 is a quantum-based program that allows the user to direct intent anywhere where they put their attention. And tonight, folks, we're going to be under the advanced features. We're going to be doing a custom intent. So we'll just pull in any particular image. This one looks pretty cool. So we'll set the power level up a little high. And in honor of our guest, we're going to be doing a custom intent for him and the audience. Let's see, the 4th in the name of his book. Everyone's third eye going tonight. So the intent is the 4th phase of water is about to rock you, opening up your third eye. Now, the course that goes a little bit further than the rules that I put in the instruction manual on how to craft your own intent, but I'm the creator of it, so I can kind of do what I want. So we're fudging it a little bit. So we're going to save that intuitively. We're going to put a couple more fractals on the screen. This is going to amplify the intent. So I will count backwards. 3, 2, 1, and we're going to nucleate the water. 3 things are going to happen. Water preparation is going to run first. We're going to remove the memories, the energy, and the structuring of the water everywhere it's ever been. Then we're going to user prep the water. We're going to create a thin veil in the water that goes right to the subconscious mind and opens it up for acceptance. And then we are going to nucleate the water. And what you'll notice down here is a number. Okay, and I've gone over this a number of times in videos, but for the new users tonight, when Source or the universe wants to communicate the perfect intent into water, thereby you consciously directing it, it's difficult because it's going through, an infinite amount of people, meaning the logic is different in terms of how we're chemically made up. So taking that intent that you write out 200 up to 200 alpha characters, I have a proprietary algorithm that uses part of the golden ratio. The Fibonacci sequence is found everywhere in nature and derives a direct integer, which is your intent, into its purest form. So although you think you'll be directing your worded intent in impressing the light frequencies on the water, you're not. You're actually moving that number, which amplifies the intent to the nth degree. So again, folks, where you put your attention, the intention will go. 3, 2, 1. We're running water preparation. We are removing the memories and the energy. Running user preparation, creating that thin veil for the subconscious mind. Now we are nucleating the water with our custom intent in honor of our guest this evening. Now I'd like everyone to go ahead and drink as much of their water as they want and notice the taste and the texture. And that one's good. I like it. Okay, Donna.
Yes, yes. So tonight, we've got a very special guest, Professor of Bioengineering at the University of Washington. Dr. Gerald Pollack is an international leader in the field of water research. He received his Ph.D. from the University of Pennsylvania in 1968. Since then, his research interests have ranged broadly over the scientific spectrum, from cardiac dynamics and electrophysiology to muscle contraction, cell biology, and more recently to the role of water in nature. Currently, Dr. Pollack runs the Pollack Laboratory at the University of Washington, which focuses on uncovering some of nature's most deeply held secrets. He is also the editor-in-chief of the science journal Water, a multidisciplinary research journal that brings together water-oriented research from diverse disciplines. Dr. Pollack has earned many distinctions, medals, and honors. And I hope you share with us your special honor that you just received. He was awarded the highest faculty honor bestowed by his university, the Annual Award Lectureship at the University of Washington in 2008. Professor Pollack is in demand internationally as a catalytic lecturer. Tonight, everyone, we welcome Dr. Gerald Pollack to the MDM Show.
Dr. Pollack, how are you, sir? You're on mute.
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. Enjoying the heat of Seattle.
So, Gerard, please. Gerald, sorry, why do I get this?
It's okay.
Oh my God, I did it. I knew I was going to do that. Tell us a little bit.
As long as it's not too derogatory.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, Donna already mentioned, and I do have a copy of that award, Donna. I put it right behind my computer. We've been studying water at the University of Washington, and we found something striking. You know, it was predicted that more than 100 years ago by a well-known scientist and actually quite a few scientists since then, that water actually has more than just the three phases that we know and understand. So, you know, everybody knows, we all learned in middle school that water has three phases: ice, right? That's the solid phase, and the liquid phase, the water that we just saw, and of course the vapor phase, the humidity in the air. But you know, it became clear even more than 100 years ago that there's something more than that, because it's not possible to explain all the interesting properties of water with just those three phases. And it's been speculated that there's another phase of water. It's not quite liquid and it's not quite solid. It's somewhere in between those, and it's more crystalline in nature. That is, the molecules are very well ordered in that phase. And a lot of scientists have been pursuing this issue for some time, and finally we came to grips with it and did experiments to check to see if it's really there. And we found indeed that it's really there. And the properties are extraordinary, and that's why, you know, if you tell an audience of people that you found another phase of water, the immediate response is yawn. So why should I care about it? But in this case, you really need to care about it, because this phase of water is all over the place, and even the water in your body is actually, it's not the kind of water that you drink, not ordinary H2O. It's actually this fourth phase of water. You're full of it, even you, Peter, and you know, some of the rest.
I play it off nicely.
So that's the first point, and you know, usually in order to build ordered phases of some sort, you need energy. It's like, to give an example, I mean, this is a well-known feature of thermodynamics, but a common example is your room, Peter, your room, right? Your room becomes messy, disordered over time. Can you find anything? Right.
Not quite.
Oh, not true. Okay. And in
Maybe
order
my laundry basket.
well, okay, yeah, but it's very nice after the washing if the laundry becomes ordered and sorted in some convenient way. But all of that, restoring order, that requires energy. You have to put your mind to it, and you actually have to do something. And all that requires energy to produce order. Producing disorder is natural. It happens easily. But then if you want to create order, you need to put energy into it. And the same principle applies in nature. You need to put energy to create order. So the question is, well, how do you get this ordered phase? And the way you get it, and it took us a few years to figure this out because it was not obvious to us, you need some kind of energy. So where does the energy come from? And the surprise, and this has something also to do with your body, the surprise is that it comes from light. The light that we can absorb from the environment. We did experiments to check that. It turned out that the kind of light that you need, any kind of light works, but the most powerful by far is infrared light. So infrared light is responsible, and some would like to call it heat, but it's basically the same as visible light, but longer wavelength. And this is the energy that we can absorb from the environment, and this is what builds and sustains this kind of water in our bodies. Some people just stop me when you want, because I could.
Well, I have a question before we go down this road.
Okay.
We were talking about the fourth phase of water.
Yeah.
And I saw a documentary or read something within the last 2 weeks that talks about they can't explain why ice is slippery. Because ice is supposed to be a solid, so how could it have a liquid on the outside? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I do. Well, the idea was the solution, the answer originally came from Michael Faraday from about 150 years ago, the famous physicist, experimentalist, and he recognized the same thing, and he said there's a thin layer of fluid right on top of the ice. It's microscopic. You can't see it. And that's the reason why it's slippery. That's step one, you might say, because if you rub your hand on a solid, as I'm rubbing on the table where I'm sitting, there's a lot of friction. It doesn't run smoothly. But if there were a liquid layer, then it would be more slippery. But we found actually more. We found that the layer that Faraday was talking about is a layer of this fourth phase water. And what I haven't said, but I will say, is that this phase is negatively charged, and next to it are always positive charges, in this case protons. So if you can imagine sitting on the surface of the ice, a whole bunch of protons, right? Or as we learned in chemistry class, they're actually hydronium ions, protons stuck to water. So imagine a lot of these positive charges sitting at the top. They want to repel each other, right? So they won't touch each other. They'll push apart. And if you have your skate that's running across that, the skate will press down on those hydronium ions, but they have the same charge, so they repel each other. So it means that your skate never really touches the ice. It presses down on that collection of protons, and this is like sort of like magnetic levitation. You put two magnets together and put the north poles together, and it's really hard to get them to touch each other, and you can slide one with impunity over the other. And I think this is the reason why ice is slippery.
So you said that you received your Ph.D. in 1968, and you did some things up until a few years ago where you got involved in water. What was the catalyst that made you get involved in water? I'm curious.
We were studying muscles. The question is, how does your muscle contract? And by how, what I mean is at the molecular level, how do the molecules interact with one another to produce force and motion? And there's a theory that's been around for close to 60 years now, put forth, maybe more than 60 years, put forth by a Nobel laureate, a very famous Nobel laureate, Sir Andrew Huxley, the late Sir Andrew Huxley. And Huxley is a was a legendary figure in science. He discovered channels in membranes, and he went on to great distinction. He's a member of the great Huxley family. It includes Aldous Huxley, the author, and Julian Huxley and Thomas Henry Huxley. These are really major figures in science. But Andrew Huxley, the one we're talking about, was the one who went on to win a Nobel Prize. And so he went on to become a really, you might say, great man. He was president of the Royal Society, knighted by the Queen, Sir Andrew, master of Trinity College, Cambridge, like president of Harvard, and so on. And so I knew him quite well, and he was the kind of guy, when he walks into the room, there's a hush. It's as though God has entered, you know, and when God enters, you keep quiet. And that was typically, as I remember, what happened. And so the community, the scientific community, you know, when God has spoken, you listen to what God says. And on the other hand, we came to the conclusion that the evidence didn't fit his theory, and there were not too many people who were willing to challenge God effectively. And we came to realize that there was one really important thing that was missing, and that is, you know, if you think about muscle, or think of any tissue or any cell in the human body, it's 2/3 water. And nobody ever thought, well, actually, I wouldn't say nobody, there were a couple of groups, but nobody seriously, except for those couple of groups, thought about the role of water in muscle contraction. You know, the water, biologists consider water to be the background carrier of the more important molecules of life, like proteins and nucleic acids and such. And the water's just sitting there. It's the bath. It doesn't do anything. But for 100 years, it's been known that water does something. It was a minority point of view, and even to this day, a lot of people don't think about water as playing a critical role. So my first entree into this was actually a book. I wrote a book in 2001 called Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life. That's 15 years ago. It challenged the point of view that water is basically irrelevant. The main message is that water is centrally relevant for everything. So that was the first point that got us interested in water. And the second was meeting a clever and courageous scientist who was sure about the centrality of water in all of nature. His name is Gilbert Lane. He's now 97 years old and surprisingly active even at his age. And by that time, he'd written several books discussing the kind of water in our body, or more specifically inside the cell, any cell. And I met him at a conference, and I was amazed. You know, it was not only his presentation. I'd heard his work before his presentation, but other people who seemed to have evidence in support of this notion that the kind of water that's in our body is really much different from a glass of water. And I remember I gave one of his books to many of my best students, either graduate students or postdoctoral fellows, and they read it, and the feedback I got from them is, this guy is on to something really important. And so the combination of meeting Gilbert Lane and realizing that there's something more inside the cell, muscle cells and other cells, besides just the proteins and other macromolecules, is the water, that set us on track to do experiments to find out more about it. And that's how it all started.
So I'm kind of curious.
So the sound you hear is an airplane passing by my house. No bombs, as far as I can tell.
Oh, good. So I'm curious. Everything I learned about water has been intuitive. You know, I don't, beyond the 3 phases, I couldn't tell you anything about water. But if you ask me how to program it, how it works, how it carries memories, and everything else, I can tell you that from A to Z. So from an intellectual standpoint, you know, from a professional, you've got that nailed. But let's look at the other side of it now, the intuitive side of water. Kind of like the work that Dr. Emoto was pioneering, and you were involved with some of that. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I wouldn't say, first I have to show you the prize I got. Donna asked me to mention that ahead of time, and I went with my wife. We went about 6 weeks ago. We went to Japan. We were invited to. It was a kind of a symposium that was created around us, around our contribution and interest, and I spent 2 days giving lectures. The first day to a group of public, people just seriously interested in water and emoto and such. And the second day was a group of scientists. And at the end of the symposium, the organizer, a fellow named Nemoto, which is, he translates as not Emoto, so he's not related at all to the late Masaru Emoto. And I was really overwhelmed. They handed me something, and it was called, I have it here and I'll show you in a moment, it was called the first Emoto Peace Prize. And here's, you can see it. So it really meant a lot to me, because nobody ever gave me a Peace Prize, and this is not my field of endeavor. I'm a scientist, but it's a great handle, because when my wife picks a fight with me, it's easy to respond and say, hey, I just got a Peace Prize, so you're not actually entitled to fight with me. I'm in for peace, not for fighting. Well, at any rate, so that's not the nature of your question. What does our stuff have to do with Emoto? Well, I think many people watching this know something about Emoto, but let me just say, to review do I need to review what Emoto is all about, or does everybody know?
I would assume they don't know anything.
Oh, okay, yeah. So what did he do? So Emoto, who died 2 years ago, was a spiritualist, and water was the vehicle for his spirituality. So at first he would play music to water, and then freeze it and look at the crystals. And when he played music that he thought was beautiful, we might think like a Bach chorale or something like that, he got beautiful crystals. And when he played heavy metal, hard rock, the crystals were ugly. And then he went on from there to pray to the crystals, to say, I love you to the crystals, and he got beautiful crystals. And when he said, I hate you, got ugly crystals. And a lot of people became interested in this. And ultimately, what he did, which is really a surprise to a lot of people, is that he took two identical containers of water, and he put a label on one of them saying, I love you, and the other one, I hate you. And it didn't matter what language it was. The results were the same, that the I love you produced beautiful crystals, and I hate you produced ugly crystals. And also, I don't care produced the ugliest crystals of all. So anyway, from a scientific point of view, most of my colleagues would say, oh, this is impossible, it's nonsense, doesn't make any sense. And I can't say myself whether, I've seen some beautiful crystals myself when I visited, and actually was in the cold room producing those. But whether it's a, you might say, statistically significant result, I don't know the answer. But what I do know is that our discovery of the fourth phase actually sets the stage for the possibility that this could actually happen from a scientific point of view. And that is that the water is absolutely capable of storing information. The type of information, the nature and quality of the information is a little bit less clear, but the information possibility is absolutely there. Now, most scientists would say this is total nonsense, because we know liquid water, the water molecules are randomly oriented, and they jiggle around at a huge number of times per second.
Don't scientists generally believe that everything's made up of energy?
No, I wouldn't say that. Energy is certainly relevant, but I would say most scientists believe it's made of matter. And in the case of water, the matter, the molecules of water are jiggling around randomly at billions of times per second. And so if you have a collection of molecules random to begin with and moving around at a frenetic rate, it seems that there's no possibility of storing information. However, there is a kind of water, that one that we discovered, that's not like that. It's crystalline, and crystals are usually what's used. You have a thumb drive and you stick it in your computer. It's basically memory. And what's it made of? Well, it's crystals of silicon dioxide, and what that means, crystal means regular, ordered, and the atoms are actually ordered one next to another in a three-dimensional array. And each one of those can be addressed, so it can be a 0 or 1. Well, the fourth phase of water is very similar to that. It's not molecules dancing around randomly. The molecules are actually highly ordered, one next to another. And there are oxygens and hydrogens. And the oxygens in particular, they have oxidation states ranging from -2, like the valence, -2, -1, 0, +1, +2. So each of those oxygens, instead of taking on merely a 0 or a 1, can have 5 different states, and they're really tightly packed. So not only does this crystalline-like structure have the capability of storing information, but it has a huge capability of storing information. And the evidence, well, you know about the evidence, Peter, but I can just tell you that I organize each year the annual conference on the physics, chemistry, and biology of water. And this is the 11th year. And each year I invite scientists from all over the world to come and share their findings. And each year there are inevitably 2 or 3 people who are reporting experiments that convincingly demonstrates that water stores information. You just put electromagnetic energy into it of some sort, and the water is changed. See, so
I do a simple experiment. It's a water blessing. We do it at the beginning of every show. Today was a little different. You take a glass of water, you put your left hand over it, you wait to feel the energy moving through your hand, and you say a few simple words. You put your attention on the water, and you say, "I honor the space in which you exist."
Yeah.
The energy increases through your hand, and when you drink it, it's unbelievably different. It's silky, it's smooth, it's radiant, it's filled with life. It goes into your body, you're intuitive. I mean, obviously everyone that is attracted to me has some level of intuitiveness. And, your body, you can direct that water in your body for different purposes. You can also use it in the environment and have staggering results with plants, with animals, helping animals, and then you can use it on the outside of the skin. I mean, it's unlimited. You unlimit your thinking, thereby unlimiting your potential.
I hear you. Many people in the world know that and agree with you. From a scientific point of view, we scientists like to have clear, definitive evidence, and I've seen it. I've seen it coming from many quarters. I've seen.
So,
yeah.
Last year we had Aquaware 4 come out, and before it came out, we had a book author, Dina, I can't remember her last name, and her partner, which was a Russian scientist, and they published their findings in one of their books, and we have a copy of what they did. They used Aquaware to run the gamut of tests, and forgive me because I don't remember the end results, but the end results were significantly greater using a tool like Aquaware to program water as opposed to holding hands and praying to it, or directly sending frequencies through it or whatever. It was really interesting, the findings. But there was also another person in Utah way back when we released the first version, and they had access to dark field microscope, I think it is.
Sure.
Is that
Yeah.
And she would look at her husband's blood under this microscope.
Look at the red blood cells.
Red blood cells.
Yeah.
And she said that blood can only exist for a finite time outside the body, I guess, before it expires. Well, they had treated the blood with Aquaware, and the blood was alive for 24 hours after it was taken out of the body. So, I mean, it's just this is the type of stuff that science fiction is written about,
Yeah, I hear you. Very interesting. Yeah, in the case of red blood cells, yeah, usually I have a tendency to clump, and clumping is not good for you. And I guess what you're saying is that your treatment of the water probably prevented that clumping and coagulation that occurred. Kept the red blood cells apart from one another. One of my colleagues, Beverly Rubik, studies that, and it was amusing because her partner, husband, I forget which, loved pork, and she took his blood just after a meal of pork, and the blood was ugly. All of the blood cells were clumped, and stopped eating pork, and the blood was beautiful after that. So that was just one anecdotal example of the blood seen with dark field microscopy tells a lot about your health, and it's wonderful that your device is as effective as it is. That's great.
In my belief system, I believe everything in existence has consciousness on some level.
Yeah.
And tuning to that consciousness, acknowledging it, once it's acknowledged, it really will step forward to help you in any capacity that it can. And obviously, water is the most programmable material on the planet. And the consciousness of water.
I think so, and I think so, but I think the world out there is yet to be convinced.
Wait, doesn't the world revolve around me and I, and not the other way around? Is that
Well, I've seen some amazing experiments. The one that demonstrating that the one that
I have personally witnessed water carbonate out of thin air. I've seen it vibrate. I've seen it crawl out of a glass. I've seen it soak through a glass. And although I never witnessed this last one, on 2 of the shows I've done on the teleseminars, there have been 2 different people that called in and said that the color of their water changed to blueberries.
Wow.
So I've witnessed a lot of very, very bizarre stuff with water.
Well, there's one guy, he won a Nobel Prize, so usually pay attention if someone wins a Nobel Prize, and this is Luc Montagnier, and Luc won a Nobel Prize for discovering the AIDS virus some years ago, and so he comes with some distinction, and he comes to our water conference each year, and he decided to study water because he was interested also in this issue of memory of water, and what he found is really astonishing. He could actually, let me explain the experiment. You have two containers, closed containers, next to one another, and one of them contains DNA, and the other one contains water. And so he puts the 2 containers next to each other, and he thinks that the DNA is sending some kind of informational wave to the water and giving that information to the water. Then after 24 hours of exposure, he takes the water, gets rid of the DNA, takes the water, and he creates new DNA from the basic ingredients, and you add water. And the new DNA that he gets has the same sequence as the DNA that was sitting next to the water. So, if this experiment is correct, and apparently there are several laboratories that have confirmed it, it means that the information, even from something as complicated as DNA, can be stored in water and then used to create new DNA. And that's amazing, if true. This is really the ultimate in information storage in water. So, the fact that we have very prominent scientists beginning to look into this is a sign that something important is really going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Pollack, can you tell us a little bit more about your book, The 4th Phase of Water?
Thank you for showing it. Sure. Yeah, 4th phase of water. It describes the results of experiments that we've done over the past decade or so, and it's written not in a highly technical way, although various colleagues have read it and appreciate it. It's written in a way that is meant to appeal to the general reader. What is water all about? How do we know that there really is this fourth phase? And why is it important to you? And the book, I was very happy. My mother, if she were alive, would be very proud of the reviews. If you look on Amazon, it's a bestseller, and the reviews are really quite amazing. We put a lot of effort into putting it together. My son, who's an artist, has drawn cartoons and images and pictures, and so it was a Herculean effort that I think was really worthwhile. So it describes this fourth phase, and it tells of a few of the properties that I mentioned earlier. That this phase, it happens, it grows whenever water is next to some kind of surface, particularly hydrophilic or so-called water-loving surfaces, where, you know, if you have a droplet of water, if you drop the droplet, it spreads out. That's hydrophilic, water-loving. The other is water on Teflon. So you put the droplet on the Teflon and it beads up. That's hydrophobic, water-hating, fearing. And they don't, the fourth phase doesn't form next to those, but it forms next to the hydrophilic surfaces. And what happens is that the water molecules that interface with the solid surface change radically. But it's not just those molecules that touch the surface. It's that layer plus up to millions of layers, molecular layers from there. They undergo massive transformation, and every property that we measured now up to 8 or 9 properties are different from ordinary water. So this is the phase. It turns out it's an ordered phase. It has a hexagonal structure, and it's built from light, as I mentioned, particularly infrared light. Usually it has negative charge, and the water beyond it has positive charge. So it's like a battery. And if you put electrodes in the negative, one in the negative and one in the positive, you can get electricity out of that. So in other words, this water acts like a battery. As long as you have light around, it gives current and voltage. And we've been able to get enough of that to light a little light bulb. And we have a patent on it. We're actually working to produce something that would be useful for humanity. It's like a photocell that uses water. It's entirely renewable. It's water and light. You get energy from just water and light. So those are a few of the basic properties that I talk about in the fourth phase of water book. And I'm proud the book has won the top international prize from the Society for Technical Communication. Well, thank you. And so it's exciting that the book has been so well received. And among people who deal with the kinds of things that you deal with, Peter, and also alternative medicine, many people have embraced the findings because, in terms of health, wellness, water is so central. And you know, modern medicine tends to miss that. Modern medicine, of course, focuses on health through pharmaceuticals. If you got something wrong, there must be a drug, some chemicals that will take care of it. And we all know the downsides of that, the side effects and risk. But the community has come to realize that water, simple water, is informed water, but water to begin with is at this absolute center of health. And if we don't have enough water in our bodies, as I said, it's fourth phase water that we have. We don't have enough, and we're not functioning well. We're sick. We're not well. So it's taken on a very high significance in terms of health. And I think the significance is justified because water is absolutely critical for health. Do you know the book that was written by this Iranian guy some years ago? His name is, I don't know if I can pronounce it right, Batmangalej or something like this, and it starts with B-A-T-M-A-N, so we refer to him as Batman. So Batman wrote a book, and the book's title is You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty. And what a great title. I met by chance his son, on an airplane, and I met him. Well, I knew who he was immediately when the flight attendant looked at him, and he had his long name, and the flight attendant came to me first, and she said, "Are you Mr. Pollack?" "Yes, Pollack, that's fine," and looked at him next to me, and "You're Mr. and she just couldn't get anywhere, and he said, "Just call me Batman." I knew immediately who he was, and we had a great discussion. And so his father was a supporter of the Shah of Iran, and when the Shah was deposed, all of his supporters got thrown into prison. And so Dr. Batman was one of those, and he was the only physician there. And so, you're thrown into prison and you got a problem. Who do you go to? Well, you go to Batman because he's a doctor. But Batman doesn't have any antibiotics or anything like that. All he has is water. So he says, well, just drink a lot of water. And it turned out that it was practically miraculous how these people would heal just by drinking a lot of water. Then when he got out finally, he did more studies on his patients, and then he wrote the book. And the book is quite compelling. As I said, it sold in something like 7 million copies on Amazon. It's a pretty inexpensive book. It's a wonderful book to read. It's anecdotal, of course. It's not clinical trials, which are obviously impossible for most people or small companies to do. It costs $100 million or something like that to run a clinical trial, and nobody has that money except drug companies. So it won't happen. But it presents in a fairly convincing way the idea that just drinking water and keeping hydrated, well hydrated, is wonderful for your health. And I think it is.
How do you know if you're actually hydrated or not?
Once more, I'm sorry?
How do you know if you're hydrated or not?
For young people, they feel thirsty. For people longer in the tooth and with graying hair, the sense of thirst is not so prominent. And it's a good question. The answer, you can't always judge by thirst because the sensor is not always working so well. And I don't know the answer to it, but certainly if you drink enough water, if you drink excess, drink enough water within reason, the excess will just come out. And it seems that if you drink the right kind of water, there are various anecdotal studies that suggest that certain waters are better for your health than other waters. Obviously, if the waters are contaminated, that's another issue. But either if you drink either good spring water or water that's manufactured, you don't manufacture water, but I should say treated in certain ways, and there are dozens of if not hundreds of such companies. I've been in contact with so many, I can't remember their names. And I've seen the evidence for at least, well, 2 of them, really, about the health benefits. The health benefits are clear. Now, I don't know, some of them may be snake oil. It's really hard to judge because the companies obviously tout the efficacy of their water. And what's really needed badly, I think, is a comprehensive study of the different kinds of water by some independent laboratory that doesn't get paid from the companies, but is seriously independent and is testing the health benefit of these various waters, and to see which ones really can do something. I've seen one particular water that comes out of a famous laboratory, and when the laboratory's leader was a fellow named Rustam Roy, who was a famous scientist, and when Rustam died, somebody in his laboratory took over the technique that he was using, and the evidence that I've seen in hospital records and interviews with patients are that this can reverse irreversible kidney pathology. People on dialysis and waiting for a kidney transplant, the water has proved really effective for that, and also for other types of disease. I haven't seen the evidence for that, but this is just representative of one type of water. And there are other types, for example, a water that is supported by the government now in Japan, the so-called Kangen water, which is high pH water produced by an electrolyzing machine. And they actually did clinical trials on that one, and the government apparently was so impressed with the results that anybody with any kind of gastrointestinal disease gets put on that water, so I'm told, and they pay for it too. So if you got an issue ranging from your intake to your outlet or anywhere in between, they'll put you on this water. And so those are just a couple of examples of water with high efficacy, and you know there are many others, but I get emails from people, so many per week, and many of them ask, which water should I drink? And you know, I can't say because I don't know the answer. But if somebody, and we're willing to do this, but we need funding to do it properly, and we don't have that funding. The idea is to test the efficacy of various waters for health. And I think this would be a huge benefit for humanity because everybody wants to know the answer, right? And we don't know the answer. Even the people who know about water don't know the answer. So this is a really important experiment waiting to be done. If any of your viewers are connected somehow with wealth and want to help support a study like this, please contact me. Really important.
Absolutely. I have witnessed many miracles with the technology over the last 10 or 12 years. The website has hundreds of testimonies, you know, and obviously I don't make any health claims at all with the software. It's used for recreational purposes only, but there is a lot of amazing testimony up there with, you know, things people have accomplished.
Yes, I'm aware of that, and you know, most people are not aware of it, and those people who might choose to actually purchase some of the waters that are produced, you know, they go to their physician or their friends and they say, "Boy, you're out of your mind. Everybody knows that water is simply H2O and there's nothing more to it, and therefore you're utterly idiotic to spend money on all this snake oil." And from the evidence that I've seen, that's really untrue. Some may indeed be snake oil.
Honestly, is the evidence from the snake oil in the interpretation of the person that's experiencing it, or from a scientific, you know, background? So I know there's a lot of snake oil out there. I've purchased products. I've used products, and in my opinion, most of it's not worth the money you're spending on it. Each generation of the technology that I've created that comes out, it becomes more effective because my understanding and my relationship and my bandwidth open up a little bit more. So I am allowed to make that code tighter and more effective. So for instance, now that Aquaware 5 is out, the whole product line will get the Aquaware 5 engine over the next 12 to 18 months. And the effects on, you know, the people that are using 5 is mind-blowing. I mean, already. The testimony, it's only been out a week and a half, and I'm getting email after email. People are posting on Facebook and everywhere else, you know, the testimony. So, you know, my question is, you know, is this all in their head? Is it snake oil? Are these people physically? I mean, I had videos on the website of people with bruises on their body. I mean, black and blue. Yeah. In 2 days of treating the area with some type of Aquaware intent, it's gone. Yeah. Now, is that mind over matter? Is that snake? What is that?
Yeah, yeah. You might.
The important piece is not what the 10,000 scientists are going to tell you. It's what that individual person, as an individual, number one, experiences with the miraculous power of technology and water. That's all that matters. Their end result.
I hear you. I really do, Peter. And you know, I haven't tried your product, but I can imagine how effective it must be. And what I'm talking about is the general impediment, where many people will say, "Oh, it's just impossible because we know all there is to know about water, and water is simply H2O, and no matter what you do to it, you still have H2O, and therefore it can't conceivably have healing power no matter what you say. There's a strong bias in that direction, and I would like to see that bias be, I don't know, tempered somewhat or muted with evidence. We started something called the Worldwide Water and Health Association, and what we're planning to do with this is to put out the evidence on a website, the scientific evidence that water is more than just H2O, and that water can have healing powers. And we hope that this will make a difference, because all you need to do is click, and there you'll see before you a compendium of evidence that addresses this. So it won't be easy for someone to say, oh, there's no evidence for this, this is nonsense. There is evidence, and to put it in one place where anybody can access it is our goal. And perhaps you want to be part of this. We're trying to get people involved, because it's another important thing to do for humanity, because simply water, the simplest substance on the face of the earth, could be the drug of the 21st century. We've known it for, we've known it for thousands of years, millennia, but somehow we don't know it, and we should know it. Water is so critical for our health.
Absolutely.
Which reminds me, I'm going to have some right now.
Donna, do we have any questions from our listening audience?
Well, we kind of have a question/comment from Becky. And Becky wanted to know, Dr. Pollack, she says, scientists do believe you can't have matter without energy. I was taught, excuse me, I was taught that in school is not wanting to see the whole truth, willful ignorance. So I think she's just kind of going back about with scientists and things like this. Do they have to have scientific evidence for them to even approach anything like this?
Well, the question is, what do we mean by scientific evidence? For one person, someone's evidence might be another person's nonsense, and if you think about how science advances, it advances when the scientific community agrees on some concept or idea. Then you move to, say, the next stage, and that next stage might be right or it might be wrong. So the question specifically about matter and energy, well, everybody talks about matter and energy, and I guess the most important one is the iconic equation of Einstein, E equals mc squared. And just a wonderful expression by Einstein just came to light recently, and he wrote a letter to his daughter, and it wasn't released until recently, 30 years after his daughter's death. And he said to his daughter, the greatest energy on the earth comes from love.
Yes.
He said, what you need to do is take my famous equation, E equals mc squared, and instead of m for mass, matter, substitute L for love. And you see, you can have boundless energy if you have boundless love. and that was a kind of a sentimentally beautiful statement by someone who we think of as a pure scientist, but he recognized that there's something more out there, and this was written in his later years. So regarding energy and matter, there are some points of view that matter is really just energy, and other people consider the two of them completely separate from one another. However, we've got energy all around us, and matter always absorbs the energy, so you have to have some kind of interaction between the two. It's more than just a philosophical issue, and if I were to say, I'd say the matter is not yet resolved one way or the other. So it's a really good question, and it has a lot of depth to it. In fact, we formed an organization called the Institute for Venture Science, and
yes.
About the idea is for us to fund pursuits of ideas that challenge conventional wisdom. and we received pre-proposals from more than well over 100 scientists, and one of them raised exactly the question that you raised about the relationship between matter and energy. So I give this as a demonstration that that issue is not yet really resolved. So this is a really interesting institute because I don't know if we have any time left, but I'm just totally excited about this because if you there are some problems with current science. We read the newspaper all the time and we see every day a new finding and exciting, but many of those are we think something might happen because of this discovery. Not we found it. It explains everything you've seen, and in other words, there are promised revolutions, but they're not realized revolutions. And if you think about the past 30 or 40 years and ask yourself how many scientific revolutions there have been, there have been plenty of technological revolutions, like the iPhone, even the internet. But when you think of fundamental science and think about revolutions, we can think about like the discovery of DNA more than 60 years ago, or the splitting of the atom, I think 75 years ago, or discovery of X-rays or periodic table. These are all old. Einstein's findings. These are very old. If you ask yourself what's happening now, there's actually very few realized scientific revolutions that you can think of, and the question is why. And I think the reason is that science has become institutionalized, and scientists would like to get money from the institutions, and getting money is not always the same as having the most brilliant revolutionary idea. And so we've created this institute to remedy that, and we designed it in such a way that it should produce breakthroughs in very few years and perhaps even revolutions. So we're excited about this, and I think you'll be hearing more about the Institute for Venture Science, ivsci.org. So anyway, I wanted to.
Dr. Pollack, we're at the end of our time, but can you let the MDM crowd know how they can get in touch with you?
Sure. My email address is GHP, Gerald Harvey Pollack, GHP at u.washington, spelled out, .edu. And I'd be happy to respond to queries. I shouldn't say happy because my life is responding to emails, but it's okay. My wife says I need an assistant, but I'm not sure. Anyway, happy to speak with you. Sure.
Awesome. Donna?
Check out the book because I think the fourth phase of water is something that many people find really interesting. Well, thank you for showing it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Donna?
Yes. And again, the fourth phase of water. Thank you, Dr. Pollack.
Oh, thank you. It's been fun.
So I guess we're going to wrap up. It's been a wonderful show.
Absolutely. Dr. Pollack, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Great
Awesome interview.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everyone. See you next Sunday, 8 p.m.
I'll get